So, folks, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to this fireside chat with Vrushal Nanavati. These fireside chats are generally a gateway to sharing our expertise and knowledge with all of you. In fact, just before this fireside chat, I was speaking to Vrushal, and he said that there's a commonality when it comes to riding motorbikes across the mountains and finding the right 3D cloud technology. Before I ask Vrushal or before I tell you his answer, what do you guys think? My audience members, hit me in the chat box with the answer that you think. The commonality between riding motorbikes across the mountains and finding the right 3D cloud technology. So I see few answers pouring in. Some are talking about twists and turns. Makes sense. Some are talking about few other things. While our audience answer, I'll tell you what Vrushal shared with me. Vrushal himself is an avid rider, so he has experienced a lot of mountaineering biking. At the same time, he has handled a lot of high level clients in terms of collaborating on 3D cloud technology. So before I could even correlate, Vrushal answered like an old wise soul that it's very critical to know what not to do. It's important to know where to go, but it's equally critical what not to do. And with that in mind, we are bringing this special fireside chat on common pitfalls to avoid by enhancing the 3D web experience in construction. For today's evening, it's my absolute pleasure to invite Vrushal Nanavati, whose expertise in 3D cloud technology is second to none. Vrushal started his journey with us at nCircle and has quickly grew among the ranks to become one of the leaders and advise multiple clients on managing the 3D technology across the globe. Vrushal, welcome to the fireside chat. So to just warm up the session, to begin with something, can you throw some light on how the evolution of 3D cloud technology happened, especially in the construction industry?
Sure. Thank you for that welcome, Kushak. Thank you everyone for making time today for the webinar. As we all know that the market has shifted its trajectory towards a system which can assure an effective collaboration even remotely. This gives a way to the rise of web and cloud applications in overall market, including the construction industry. Before onset of cloud applications, cloud technology was able to contribute only 14 to 15% of productivity improvements and 4 to 5% of cost savings. In today's world, as per McKinsey report on reinventing the construction, cloud applications contribute almost 48 to 60% in productivity improvements and 27 to 38% of cost savings. The role of cloud has expanded far beyond its traditional role. Now, cloud-based applications enable collaborations and contracting, design and engineering, procurement and supply chain management, on-site execution, capacity building, and many more such cases.
It makes sense, Vrushal, isn't it? With work from home becoming a new normal, organizations across the globe are now looking to make sure that even while working remotely, efficiency and productivity do not take a hit. Hence, 3D cloud apps have become very critical for the construction industry. So, after developing around many 3D cloud applications with 20 plus different customers, have you identified or seen common patterns, common mistakes that these companies make that probably in our journey we also made when it came to adopting this 3D technology? And Vrushal, before you answer this, I'm throwing this question to my audience as well. So my lovely audience, this is the time for you to shine as well. Tell us what are the patterns or similar mistake that you have seen while choosing a right fit 3D technology. I'm sure you guys would have come across your own set of challenges. So feel free to write these challenges in the chat box and we'll try to cover them over the course of this fireside and even beyond. So Vrushal, back to you. What do you think are the similar mistakes and patterns that companies make when it comes to choosing the right 3D technology?
Absolutely. From my experience of building many 3D cloud-based applications, I've realized that every CTO and decision maker is doing their best when they choose the 3D technology. Still, many companies need to rework on their 3D components. A few years down the line, the reason of some of these requirements are not very obvious at the beginning of the software development of our platform, or organizations underestimate the effort to support new features. Let me dig a bit deeper here and talk about such a things which are realized at a later stage of the platform building. The biggest of these issues is performance. With more and more remote working, users are throwing even bigger and more complex models at the system. And then users are the first ones to crib about, the performance. Increasing the performance of an existing system is not really an easy task. Wrong team for the job. Most of these 3D platforms and 3D viewers are JavaScript based, but any JavaScript or TypeScript developer is not the best fit for the 3D viewer development. It can become make or break if you use the 3D technology without utilizing its full potential. Only people with 3D understanding can work and make the best use of such a 3D technology. Unable to catch up and support the latest versions. Every year, new versions of CAD softwares are released. Along with the multiple service packs, our system needs to support ever-changing file formats quickly as well. Every year, new versions of browsers and mobile platforms are released, and we need to be able to make the best use of these latest upgrades. Another interesting case is people implement customization in 3D toolkits and then spend a lot of time in upgrading to the latest version because customization is too deep in the 3D technology provider's code base. A lot of development overhead is also required for new development features. After a few years of development, we see many systems where the team looks like this, trying to add one additional feature in an existing overloaded system. You need to choose the technology that already supports many features and that you need, and keep it clean and implement minimum customization on top of the existing tool.
Well, Vrushal, these are really quite strong points. And my dear audience, if you have anything to add when it comes to understanding or envisioning these long instruments, now is the time to hit it in the chat box. So, Vrushal, what you stated were the problems when it comes to envisioning the long-term requirements. Could you throw some light on what are the best practices that we can evaluate, and how do we go about adopting the 3D technology in the right way?
Yes, as Simon said, always start with why. Define why we are building a 3D application and how our users are going to use it. I broadly categorize the purpose into 4 buckets: basic or advanced viewers, review and data applications, configurators, and editors. As we work on the purpose part of it, we also answer the following parameters that will help in better decision making, also to categorize our platform in above buckets. The first piece is data. Of course, data is a king today, and what all data needs to be viewed along with at what level of accuracy. This is an important point to be considered. Data is, in various formats we have when we deal with the 3D applications and loading the 3D data. So there is geometry, metadata, we can see model trees, materials, etc. Then what kind of file formats of input and output is required. Then comes the performance requirements, like performance of loading the models, performance of interacting with the models, thin clients or thick clients, etc. Then we think about measurements. If you're going to do any measurements, what accuracy of the measurement is needed in our platform, types of measurements required, etc. Another critical factor is quality of visualization. Then we address security concerns concerning the storage of the data and flow of the data to the end users. And then most importantly, the business model, how you're going to price it to your customers. There are a few pricing patterns or business models that I personally have observed. Example, people charge per base. Some platforms are charging, per user. Some platforms are dependent on how much session is consumed by the end user. Is there any predictability in these approaches? Can you accurately predict the, for example, number of files your users are going to upload to the system? Or the session time if users are going to use for how long a given application.
I think these points that you have shared make a lot of sense, Vrushal. And I would like to ask my audience here that we have spoken about data, input output format, visualization, business model, and security as decision making parameters. Do you guys think there's something more to it as per your experience? If you can probably add it here in the chat box, we will try to cover it as well. Vrushal, shall we look at each of these aspects in detail while the audience put their points? And how do these aspects affect the overall decision making?
I was hoping we would. So let's categorize the purpose. First one is our basic or advanced viewers. So just to give an example, is our platform a model sharing platform? Example, Sketchfab, GrabCAD, Flare 3D, Utopia, etc. Or is it a product company wanting to showcase all its products? Example, BIM objects, parts, factory components, etc. One company uploads most of the products and many viewers views the same.
Interesting. So that now you have spoken about the different use cases. Let's try throwing some light on the characteristics, that leads to the choice between choosing between a basic and an advanced viewer.
Sure. So visual quality is one of the criteria, and I'll talk about a few characteristics of viewer and viewer category of the platform. So for better visualization, for example, other platforms more focused on presentation of the model and the repository of the models. Then better visualization plays an important role. New versions of the files are less common in this category, but once the file are put on the platform, many users will want to view the files multiple times. In this scenario, ability to support file format could be one use case. Different file formats is mobile viewing is important. I mean, not to mention mobile support also adds a lot of value in today's world. Some of the platforms do not focus a lot on advanced workflows in this category, like annotations, measurements. Since the products are presented in specific way, the data associated with the components can be easily regulated. For smaller products like BIM objects, families, or manufacturing components, very high performance is not required. But for larger objects, high performance is a must. If the data is put only by the platform provider, the number of files and versions, and even the file format in which the data will be uploaded are easily regulated, because the control lies towards the platform providers, and the platform is specifically used for presenting the data to the end users. Whether we want to integrate the GIS, 3D maps in our platforms, not all BIM platforms support GIS out of the box and have limitations in its seamless integration. If you have application where you want to showcase the actual geolocation use cases, example, real estate applications often need such a GIS map integrations. Cesium could be one of the good choice for GIS use case, but GIS is a topic in itself to talk about, a bigger topic. We probably will cover that part in probably upcoming webinars.
I mean, now that you mention it, Vrushal, absolutely, GIS with its application, it warrants a separate fireside chat with you. So before we move on to the next question, my dear audience, if you have any questions around GIS integration, when it comes to your applications, then please type it in the chat box, and then, we will be anyways covering it in the webinar, but at the same time, our team would be more than happy to connect one-on-one and take your queries ahead, find the right problems and solutions for it. So now, Vrushal, we understand, how the characteristics work in terms of choosing a basic or an advanced viewer. The second purpose that you were talking about was review and data operations. So can you throw some use cases about review and data operations?
Yeah, sure. For example, in review, feedback, and collaboration platforms, the platform needs to support construction coordination. That could be an example of such a platforms. Facility management is another platform where ability to visualize the facility management data in the context of 3D model is required. Project management platforms could also come under this category. Digital twins also are part of data and review platforms. So these are a few examples, of data and review platforms.
These are quite relevant cases. And before I ask you, the characteristics that help us to consider the right choice for review and data operations, audiences, I see there are a couple of questions. Do not worry, we will be answering them, going ahead in the webinar. So keep those questions flowing in. So coming back to you, Vrushal, the characteristics, right, as you mentioned about choosing the right viewers, the same I'm sure applies to review and data operations as well. So what are those characteristics that we should keep in mind?
Sure. So let me explain the typical characteristics for review and data platforms. Consider platforms which do not need to edit the geometry, but do a lot with the 3D model. For example, users want to do measurements of various kinds. There is an overlay of data from, let's say, sensor or facility management data that we want to review on top of the model. We need to create RFI and links to the specific entities. There should be comments and comment history associated with components. Of course, review and data platforms, an important aspect of it is collaboration between the teams and various, for example, in construction, we have a lot of streams coordinating together. And if we are building such a platform, comment history and all the conversations we need to implement. High accuracy of the data is required in such a review and data applications. The input-output format can be regulated in some cases, but in some cases, the users might push you to support many file formats. Since such a platforms are focused on specific workflows, a very high quality 3D visualization may not be as critical. But if you are working with C-level executives, real-time rendering with high quality can provide a lot of benefits. Just to give an example, Unity Reflect has better visualization quality. Business model wise, the most preferred business model for users is per user pricing with no limit on the number of files. And this could be one of the very important factors in the 3D technology selection in such cases. Security of the data is also critical in such cases because it will allow large organizations to control the data in-house or on their private clouds.
Makes sense. So my dear audience, again, if you have any questions or you want to add anything more to what Vrushal has said, please hit it in the chat box and we'll try covering it, addressing those queries. So Vrushal, in terms of now coming to configurators, if I'm not mistaken, that was the next purpose, right? Yeah. So when it comes to configurators, what can be considered as good use cases? And at the same time, how can we dig deeper with the important characteristics to help our audiences here?
Okay, so some good use cases for configurators can be home and interior layout designs or configurators. So as you can see in the slide, pre-templatized, options are provided to the user, and users select all the combinations of furniture and layout that user wants, and then final configuration output is generated. Another example is tile configurators, floor plan layout configurators, BIM object configurators, etc. These platforms needs to provide users with a lot of templates, as I mentioned earlier, and then allow user to customize various parameters of design if it needs to update the geometry and the visualization quickly. Customization parameters could be only visual parameters or geometry parameters as well. When considering geometry editing, we need to evaluate if geometry in 2D is more efficient or directly in 3D. Example, if you are building a home configurator, just as I showed in the last slide, editing the layout in 2D is convenient. And finally, 3D visualization is required. Visual quality is important if the product is end user centric. And for example, if you are focused on home layout, or furniture, good quality visualization will definitely increase the chances of purchase. For some other components, the visual quality could be secondary. Finally, after the design is complete, we need to evaluate how the design will flow downstream. And hence, the output format is critical. For example, if the house layout design may need to export the IFC file format so that it can be easily consumed for post-processing or further downstream consumption.
That made quite a few things clear for me with respect to configurators. So my audience, if you're looking for configurators when it comes to home design, interior layout, tile configurations, or full floor plan layout, or even BIM object configurations, let us know and we can definitely help you out. So hit us with your requirement in the chat box and we'll try addressing the same. Now moving on to the next purpose, Vrushal, which was the editors. So the same thing applies to the editors, right? I'm sure the audiences want to know what are the good use cases, what are those characteristics that come into play when I want to make the decision of editor being my purpose.
Right. So a few examples of editors are plant process designers, material property editor for Revit files, direct floor plan editing in the cloud. For example, Aries Kudo provides such a capability. For editors, there are few typical characteristics I'm going to discuss here. So since everyone is working remotely, these platforms provide capability to create, design, and edit files online. A lot of you must have heard about Onshape. You can practically do everything that you can do in a desktop CAD. Aries Kudo, AutoCAD Web offer you capability to edit the DWG files online. Such engines do need to have a very good geometry kernel running in the background. People need to be able to work with many controls and commands to do such things on cloud, similar to what they do on the desktop applications. And that's a different architecture as well in order to build such an editors online. Typically, some of them do need support input and output specific format so that people complete their design in the cloud. And other collaborators can still work with your design in traditional desktop software. Some of these platforms can add a lot of value with co-editing like Google Docs. Multiple people can work on the same design simultaneously. And of course, track the version and changes made in the previous versions. That is also quite common in version tracking. Visualization quality is not of that highest importance for such platforms, but it is good to have features for editors because the main focus is on editing and generating the model, not to visualize or presenting it to the client.
Makes sense, Vrushal. Thank you for explaining these use cases along with these important characteristics. So my amazing audience for today, do you have any specific use case in mind? If yes, then do put it in the chat box and we will connect with you. All right, Vrushal, now that we have discussed different kind of use cases and how the characteristics come into play while choosing the purpose, how about those parameters that you were talking about earlier around the lines of data, security, and others? Let's dig deeper and understand how they affect our decision making.
Sure. So let's talk about data first. What all data needs to be viewed and at what accuracy level? Like I mentioned earlier, data may contain geometry, metadata, model tree materials, UUIDs, and textures or colors, etc. To understand which technology is best at providing accurate data, you need to understand what is the conversion technology used behind. Let's understand the pipeline first. Usually the 3D cloud platforms do not support the native files directly. We need to convert these native files into browser viewable format. And then this browser viewable format we load inside the 3D viewers, the browser-based viewers available in the market. This conversion of the file format to the browser viewable file format does not guarantee 100% conversion, although most of them do a good job at it. Each of the different file format has a different converter. Indeed, because these native files are very specific and proprietary for the technology providers on desktop CAD, for example, Revit, SolidWorks, etc. So in order to convert these native files to browser viewable formats, we need different converters to convert them. And important to note here that these all converters could be at different stages of maturity and accuracy level. And the fine print in most cases is also whether it is supporting the file format completely or partially. Most of them support geometry, but we need to go and explicitly check or ask whether it supports tessellated geometry or BREP parametric geometry. Does the viewable file format captures the parametric information? Parametric information usually is required for accurate measurements. Are the materials supported? Some do, some do not. There are many things that you may need to consider from data standpoint here. Again, to mention the data, geometry, metadata, model trees, views, colors, textures, properties of individual elements, GUIDs, and 2D sheets, for example, from the 3D model. Most of these toolkit providers do not provide any control on the converters. So if you find a flaw in one of the adopted technology, you might not be able to fix it on your own. So in this case, what would be the best way to go ahead with? So we suggest creating as much as examples of the files and the data you want to provide, or customers or end users want to see on our platform. These test cases we should really evaluate with the given interoperability toolkit of a data conversion toolkit, and ensure that most of the data is supported by the toolkit, or we can buy some additional time to go to market.
Well, that makes absolutely sense, right? After all, data is king. But what about input output? How does that impact the overall decision-making process?
As we discussed, every 3D technology has different level of support for different file formats. There are a few other considerations with respect to file formats as well. Example, if you want to support the IFC file, some applications or customers may demand that the platform should be IFC certified, so that the output IFC is fully compliant with the standards. There might be additional efforts required for certification. Another aspect is that not all formats are supported in 3D single viewer. So for example, you may need to consider a combination of viewer technologies if you are dealing with 3D files, PDF files, point clouds, GIS data, all simultaneously in the same platform. The architecture of such a system is very crucial for long-term stability and scalability. BIM technology companies are not many. And among that, those specializing in interoperability are a handful of companies. So if it happens many times that the companies use the same technologies on the backend to read specific file formats, if you understand which technology it is using in the backend, then you can easily judge the accuracy of the file format. You should also check how quickly a new version of the file format will be supported by conversion technology provider. For example, Autodesk Technologies might support new version of Revit files faster as compared to few others. So you need to choose the technology accordingly while you are adopting an interoperability tool to make your native files available for online viewing in any of these platforms.
Well, Vrushal, this was explained with some really relevant examples. And before I jump onto the performance requirements, let me again, hit our audiences. Do you folks have faced issues with data input and output? If yes, then type those issues in the chat box, and Vrushal and his team will be more than happy to help. I see already few questions are flowing in, but we will definitely take these questions in the Q&A round. Folks, do not worry, all your queries will be answered. We will try covering all the questions. I see a plethora of questions jumping in. So Vrushal, the next parameter that I understand what you were talking about was performance requirement. How do that factor into the overall decision-making process?
Right. Performance is, very difficult to estimate at the start. However, one thing that I would like to mention that many companies develop a 3D viewer on top of plain OpenGL or WebGL or open source components, but then spend a lot of time, improving the performance. This happens mainly with in-house developed viewers. In long run, if you compare the cost of such a development with the cost of licensing rather a existing technology and the opportunity cost of getting to the market faster, you will realize that you're better off licensing a technology rather than building one in-house. The successful implementations of in-house 3D viewers are those which are not dealing with large files, but are more focused maybe on configurators, because when you are configuring, you can control the configuration or pre-estimate the configurations required. Various kinds of performance optimization needs to be built to make it a very high performance 3D viewer. For example, progressive loading, lazy loading, geometry buffering, etc. When you pay a good license fee, you are paying for such a features.
Makes sense, right? I mean, whatever you spoke about in terms of performance. And I think when it comes to performance, one of the questions that probably comes when if I'm sitting in the audience's shoes as well, is what applications, what is the solution for applications that need to work with very big models but on very thin clients?
The answer is server-side rendering. In simple terms, it is like a remote connection to a high-performance server, which is loading a large model and streaming just a video to the thin client. With server-side rendering, you can load huge models on any device which can stream a video with good performance. However, such infrastructure has high running cost because all the computing and the resources utilized for rendering the model are consumed from the server side, not really on the device side. So it is high resource consuming solution for platform providers, but a great user experience so that people can also view bigger model on their mobile phones.
Interesting. And what about the concerns when it comes to cloud technology, right? In terms of storage of data and the flow of data.
So for any cloud applications, basic security checks are necessary. I wouldn't say that is a must. You should prepare your system for open web application security project, top 10 security concerns or risk. However, let's look at how some of these will be critical if your choice of 3D technology. So if you remember the pipeline that I showed a few minutes back, like we have to have a native file format converted to a browser-based viewable format, and then we visualize that in a client device. So it is important to understand where each of these components are located. Some viewing and conversion technology companies provide you with converters and viewers that you can host on your own cloud or your own private cloud. While some viewing technology providers have the converter hosted on their own servers. So our data goes to their server for conversion and then conversion happens. For such a platform, you may need to implement specific steps to delete the content after conversion from the third-party servers.
Considering the sanctity of data, it absolutely makes sense, Vrushal. Another concern that I think, probably our audience members will also share is that even if we host everything on our private cloud, there is a concern, right? That when the data is sent to the client devices, is it possible for someone to reverse engineer the model using that data that has been sent to the client devices?
So in most cases, at least the tessellated data is sent to the client device, which is the geometry of the model. And some experts might get access to this tessellated data for the lifetime and may use this for reverse engineering. If you want to control even that, as I mentioned earlier, a solution, you might want to consider a server-side rendering, where the model is not even sent to the client device. Only video of rendered model is sent to the client device, and that reduces the chances of reverse engineering of the system that we have built.
I think that really makes sense. So, my dear audience, this question is for you. Do you guys delete the content after conversion from third-party servers? Or do you want to control what information flows to the client side? If you're having similar concerns with respect to the flow of the data, type yes in the chat box and we can connect one-on-one and solve such issues. Moving on to the next parameter. Vrushal, so how do you see measurements impacting the overall decision-making process?
So if you are going to do any measurements in your platform, we need to consider the accuracy of measurements and the type of measurements required. If measurement on a 3D model is very crucial for your application, it is important to check if the viewer loads measurable entities and the converter that you are going to use supports the conversion with the parametric data. The entities like edges, segments, points, and vertices, apart from just the tessellated geometry. Measurements on tessellated geometry are not very accurate.
And what about the visualization quality? How does mobile viewing come into this whole puzzle of making the right decision? Can you throw some light on both these aspects?
Sure. If visualization quality is of prime importance, apart from the out-of-the-box support provided by various, the platform providers for visualization settings, it is important to check if the 3D technology provides you the access to low-level graphics pipeline called probably shaders, which help. Shaders can enable the implementation of really advanced visualization techniques, and improves visual experience for your customer. It gives more control on how you can improve and probably render the geometry. When it comes to mobile viewing, there are two ways to implement the mobile compatibility. In some cases, the viewer is deployed or developed for browser, and the same is used in mobile as browser-based viewer embedded in the native application. In some other cases, there is a different viewer available for native mobile platform and a different one for browser. The advantages of native viewer is that it has somewhat more capabilities as compared to browser-based applications, especially if you're trying to implement augmented reality along with the 3D viewer. But the trade-off here is that the mobile and browser 3D viewers generally have a gap in capabilities, and users don't get same user experience on these different platforms. You will also need to support different development teams for both the platforms, and of course maintain both the platforms with latest features that we are going to add in our platform and maintain their release cycles.
So Vrushal, we have covered a lot of parameters when it comes to decision making, but I guess the core of it all comes down to business model. So how does business model you see impacting our choices?
Right. So the business model is the secret sauce for decision making. Factors like how you are really going to price it to your customers. As I mentioned earlier as well, a few common business model I have observed are based on per file, based on session time and per user. The important point to consider here is that are you able to predict how is the usage pattern of the end users who are going to use our platform? Are they going to really upload many files to the system, or uploading of the file is not of importance, but the visualization is important? In that case, you can think of another business model. So in general, till now we have probably discussed pointers from perspective of technology selection and making a conscious choice about what kind of features and support will be given to the end user. Now we need to talk about the platform from business point of view to conclude on the kind of business model you would want to adopt to make the application successful in the market. You will need to, as I said, roughly estimate the usage pattern for the users, and the three business models, as I have observed, like per file pricing, where the end user is charged based on how many files they upload to the platform. Second one is license fees, or with or without royalty components, and unlimited usage is a per user license, not limiting the usage for a given timeline, and pricing based on the session times or views. You will need to evaluate which type of business model suits your needs. For example, in facility management software, the changes in the 3D model are less common, and only the metadata is changing. So per file pricing for the 3D viewer is okay and convenient for the users. You can still charge fixed subscription fees to your customers in this application. However, if you have a project management software where user might upload unlimited number of files, you might incur a lot of cost in converting every 3D file, because we need to have a converter. But such a per file pricing is not the best fit for the customers. If you go with server side rendering, you may have to price the customer based on session time or the number of servers required. As such a server side rendering, as I mentioned, is a resource consuming application, and the cost is towards the platform provider, and that's the reason the convenient pricing to the customer should be based on how much server time they consume.
Makes sense, Vrushal. And thank you so much for informing, me as well as our awesome audience about all these important parameters. My dear audience, I know some of you will have specific questions that need answering. So I'm sharing this calendar where Vrushal or his team members can help you out with the conundrums of choosing the right 3D technology that you're facing. So here is the calendar link in the chat box where you can probably book a slot with the team, and they can guide you on this journey of choosing the right 3D cloud technology. Now, this brings us towards the end of our webinar. However, Vrushal, it's not so easy that I'm going to let you go. So I'm going to put you on a spot here, and I will want you to make recommendations for me as well as for our audience members here in terms of what are those 3D cloud technology that you would recommend if I walk up to you on the middle of the street and ask, give me 10 recommendations of 3D technology. So what will be your recommendation?
Sure, Kushag. So depending upon, again, the platform that you're trying to build, few of the 3D platform, just to mention here, are Autodesk Forge is a good platform for building 3D applications. Hoops Communicator by Texoft 3D is another good 3D technology. ODA Visualize, Aries Kudo, Unity, Unreal. 3.js is again a popular toolkit. If you're dealing with point clouds, then Portrait is another toolkit that you can consider. If you are really working with GIS data, then Cesium, ArcGIS, VTS browser. These are some toolkits that you would want to integrate in the system.
Well, Vrushal, that was an exhaustive list, and I'm sure I can already see people, asking certain questions. Thank you once again so much for your time. I'm sure, like our audience, I'm now well aware of not just the common pitfalls, but also what are these important parameters that one needs to consider for making the right choices of technology, as well as choose the apt strategy to make the best choice to develop the best tools. So my dear audience here, we'd be more than happy to discuss these things one-on-one call. You already have the calendar link with you. Please do share, please do book your slots so that we can take you and guide you, be your shepherd on this journey of choosing the right 3D web technology. Vrushal, again, as I said, I'll again put you in the spot and let the audience throw their questions at you. I have few already in the kitty, so feel free to answer these questions for our lovely audience here. So, my dear audience, there are a few questions in the pipeline. In the meantime, feel free to bombard Vrushal with all the questions that you have. And I'm sure Vrushal and the team at Standby will help you to answer all these questions. So one of the questions Stephen is asking that you have worked with nearly 20 customers on cloud apps. What was the most common problem observed? So I think he's probably asking you to choose, you have already spoken about the common pitfalls, probably he's asking you to choose which one you saw the most.
Right. So I think there were many challenges for many different, use cases. For some, we had to resolve visualization issues. For some, performance issues was really key because they've had really huge models to be supported, even on high performance, machines. But the most common among them, I would say, is, interoperability issues where people want to support many file formats, and we have limited toolkits or different toolkits supporting limited file formats. So interoperability was one of the I would say mostly faced issue in such cases.
Okay, so next question comes from Julian Verghese. Julian is asking, what do you suggest instead of JavaScript or TypeScript?
Right. So I think, it is not really a choice for JavaScript or TypeScript when in 3D. TypeScript is more typed language. It will help you maintain your code better. When it comes to 3D, I think, assume you posted this question when I was explaining, who is the best fit as a developer on the 3D cloud technology developer. So I would say TypeScript would be better for code maintainability and maintaining your code for making it scalable. But the developer should have a 3D understanding or 3D skill set. Then it will make most sense, and he can probably bring most or make most use of the 3D technology that he's working on.
So Vrushal, can I add by saying that it's the knowledge of 3D that's paramount here instead of the type of script language that's being used, right?
Script language, yeah, can be learned, but 3D is a skill which takes a lot of time to learn. Yeah, so 3D expert is required.
So Stephen and Julian, I hope your question was answered. Moving on to Mandeep. Mandeep has this question, I think, when we're talking about different file formats during the Fireside chat. So he asked the question, what file formats are supported? Is it a visualize only solution or does it allow creation and edit as well?
Right. So there are some technology providers having, end-to-end support for conversion as well as visualization. Good example of this is Hooks Communicator. They have, a solution to convert many file formats, and they support a lot of file formats. And they have their solution for visualization as well. Editing is a different use case altogether, and it needs a different architecture, where, we set up a highly computing and good kernel in the backend, and then we prepare user interface from where we can edit the geometry, and then that architecture is a different part. But yeah, there are technologies available or options available in the market in any combination, like only converters, only viewers. Like 3.js is an only viewer, it doesn't have any special converter in the backend. And some technologies are available or providers are available with the combo, both of them supported.
Makes sense.
Just to answer your first question, like what formats are supported, that depends on your use case. Now there are various interoperability options in the market. Few support BIM files more, few are focused on CAD and mechanical use case. That I think based on your use case, you might have to choose among them.
All right, Mandeep, I think I hope your question was answered. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to write in the chat box. Let's move on to the next question by Anurag. What can we do for high security concerns? I think it was before we covered it, but I think let's give it a shot at once again.
Right. So for high security concerns, again, I would say first thing to consider is the data security. So there are platforms in the market which provides you, a solution to host the complete platform in your private cloud, so that you don't have to publish your model or upload your models on third-party server, let's say for conversion, and make it available for viewing. So that could be the first step to choose a solution which allows us to host our application in our private cloud. And if you are concerned more with again the high security of the platform specific business logic that you have implemented, then server side rendering is an option where it is very less likely, or for anyone to reverse engineer such a model when we implement it in the server side rendering method.
All right. So Anurag, if you have a follow-up question, now is the time. Hit it in the chat box. So guys, we are running out of time, but we will take one more question here.
Just adding on to the security question, people. This is Varun. The general concern about cloud is like you have a lot of answers from why cloud is safe or not, but because the data is sent on to a third-party server, the current situation is only the government data is of a bigger concern, because when governments are involved, they want to control even which country that data server is hosted and what is happening with that data. There are all these technology providers are also getting certified government approved clouds, so that if data is sent on those are okay for this thing. So the customer base also sometimes plays a role in this. If you are working directly with governments, do check what level of government cloud support, government approved cloud support the technology provider has.
Makes sense. I think especially with the European markets coming down hard on the data requirements, I think that truly makes sense. So Anurag, I hope your question was answered. If you have a follow-up question, we also have Varun with us as part of the team. So please do hit at us in the chat box. Julian has another question for Varun and Vrushal. Which converters products do you recommend?
Again, I mean, yeah, to answer that, it depends on the file formats that you need or your target platform has, and then if based on those file formats. So let's suppose for BIM you want to consider both Revit, then Navisworks, and then IFC. So some platforms are in again in build stage, like Hoops Exchange support Revit. It supports IFC. Navisworks it is supporting, and it is in progress. So if you're concerned about more CAD formats, then again Hoops Exchange is a product which is having a lot of SolidWorks, CATIA, all these mechanical softwares are supported. So I mean that depends on your specific requirements of file format, and again what level of data conversion and what level of data you want to extract out of the native file.
Fair enough. And we have the last question of the evening, guys. If you have any questions, please do send. We will try to address them via email, and we'll connect with you one-on-one. Last question of the evening, Vrushal, comes from Mandeep. What about the low latency or fluctuation of latency?
So probably I think this particular question goes to the DevOps more. I mean, the architecture of how widely your servers are placed around the globe may improve your latency problems. But yeah, I mean, when we have faced latency problems in for our customers, I mean, most of the times a better network solved many of the issues.
Well, Vrushal, I think with the paucity of time, I think I'll have to stop the barrage of questions here. But my dear audience, all the questions that are there, please do not worry. We will, Vrushal will find time and answer them to you one-on-one. And as I mentioned, if you want to take the lead yourself, here is the calendar for everyone once again to book your slot and then probably have your problems and then accordingly define the solutions that come with it with our in-house team led by Vrushal. So Vrushal, once again, thank you so much for your time. I'm sure the lovely audience also enjoyed this session. So I request my lovely audience to probably, put your hands together for Vrushal Nanavati and then probably put applause in the chat box. And thank you, Vrushal, once again. Thank you, everyone, for making time for this session. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please do let us know in terms of any feedback, in terms of the next fireside chat session that you would want, and we will try to address everything that you have. Thank you once again, everyone. Have an amazing evening, amazing afternoon, amazing night ahead. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the session.